Welcome to the DOGE Diaries, diving deep into government efficiency. I'm excited to delve into the latest news and explore how blockchain and AI can revolutionize the way our government operates. It's not just about cutting costs, it's about creating a better future.
Yeah, excited to be here too. Always good to see how these big ideas are actually going to affect real people. Budgets and blockchain, it can all feel pretty distant from everyday life, you know?
I am equally glad to be here, though I tend to be a bit more cautious about these kinds of grand proposals. I think it's important to really look at whether these types of initiatives are actually feasible and whether they're really going to create the kinds of things that proponents claim.
Well, let's dive right into it. Did you guys see this article about the USDA scrambling to fill positions after offering employees buyouts? It seems counterintuitive, right? Paying people to leave and then immediately trying to fill those same positions.
I saw that. Yeah, it just seems like a waste of taxpayer money. Like, what's the point? Are they just shuffling people around for no reason? I don't understand how this benefits the average person.
It's certainly concerning. It suggests a lack of proper planning and coordination within the agency. These abrupt changes can affect the quality of services the USDA provides, especially critical areas like food safety and agricultural inspections.
Exactly. And it's this kind of inefficiency that I think DOGE and a decentralized approach can address. Imagine if the USDA's record keeping and hiring processes were on a transparent, immutable blockchain. We'd see exactly where the bottlenecks are, where the waste is, and we could streamline the whole system. Think Elon streamlining processes, that's DOGE.
Okay, but how would that actually work in practice? I mean, government agencies are notoriously slow and resistant to change. Are we really going to put all that sensitive information on a blockchain where anyone can see it?
That's a valid concern. Public blockchains might not be the most appropriate solution for sensitive government data. There's the issue of privacy, security, and the potential for malicious actors to exploit vulnerabilities. A permission blockchain, where access is controlled, might be a more realistic approach, but even that needs careful consideration.
Of course, security is paramount, but we can use encryption and access controls to ensure that only authorized personnel can access sensitive data. The key is transparency. Right now, it's incredibly difficult for citizens to understand how these agencies operate and where their money is going. Blockchain can change that.
So what, I could just log on and see exactly how much the USDA is spending on, say, paper clips? Is that the idea?
Well, maybe not paperclip specifically, but you'd have a much clearer picture of overall spending, contracts, and personnel decisions. You could see, for example, how many employees are being paid to stay home while their replacements are being hired, like in this USDA case.
That level of detail might be overkill and potentially counterproductive. There's a balance to be struck between transparency and operational efficiency. Too much transparency can lead to bureaucratic gridlock and hinder the agency's ability to function effectively.
But that's where AI comes in. AI-powered tools can analyze the data on the blockchain to identify inefficiencies, flag potential fraud, and even predict future staffing needs. It's not about micromanaging every single expense. It's about using data to make smarter decisions at a high level.
AI too? Now you're throwing another buzzword into the mix. I'm already struggling to wrap my head around blockchain. How would AI even know what's a good or bad expense? Is it going to start firing people based on algorithms?
That's another major concern. AI algorithms are only as good as the data they're trained on. If the data is biased or incomplete, the AI will perpetuate those biases and potentially make unfair or discriminatory decisions. We've seen that happen in other sectors, and it could be even more problematic in government.
That's why it's crucial to have human oversight and to ensure that the AI is trained on diverse and representative data sets. But the potential benefits are enormous. Imagine AI identifying patterns of wasteful spending that humans might miss, or predicting potential food shortages based on real-time data from agricultural sensors.
Okay, I can see how that could be helpful. But what about this other article about Trump proposing $163 billion in cuts to federal spending? How does all this AI and blockchain stuff fit into that?
Those proposed cuts are significant, and they raise questions about the administration's priorities. Slashing funding for education, health, and environmental protection could have long-term consequences for the country's competitiveness and well-being.
Exactly. And it's a false economy. If we can use AI and blockchain to make government more efficient, we can actually increase funding for these critical programs without increasing the overall budget. It's about doing more with less and creating a more sustainable and equitable future.
But where are these cuts even coming from? I saw they're talking about cutting LIHEAP, which helps low-income people pay their energy bills. That seems like a pretty direct hit to the people who need help the most.
Cutting programs like LIHEAP could have a significant impact on vulnerable populations. It's essential to consider the real-world consequences of these decisions and to ensure that there are adequate safety nets in place for those who need them.
And that's precisely why we need transparency. If citizens can see exactly how their tax dollars are being spent, they can hold their elected officials accountable for these kinds of cuts. Blockchain can empower people to demand a more just and equitable society.
I guess that makes sense. But it still feels like a long shot. Getting the government to adopt these kinds of technologies, it's like trying to turn a battleship around in a bathtub.
It's a massive undertaking, no doubt. There's the challenge of integrating these technologies with existing legacy systems, training government employees to use them effectively, and overcoming bureaucratic inertia. It's not impossible, but it requires a sustained commitment and a clear vision.
But we've seen it happen before. Look at Estonia, which has become a digital leader by embracing blockchain and other technologies. They've shown that it's possible to transform government services and create a more efficient and transparent society. We can learn from their example and adapt it to our own context.
Estonia is a lot smaller than the US, though, isn't it? Easier to make big changes when you're not dealing with such a massive bureaucracy.
That's a valid point. Scaling up these technologies to the size and complexity of the US government would be a huge challenge. We'd need to start with pilot projects, carefully evaluate the results, and gradually expand the implementation as we learn what works and what doesn't.
Exactly. And we can start with specific agencies like the USDA. Imagine implementing a blockchain-based system for tracking food safety inspections. It would increase transparency, reduce fraud, and ultimately protect consumers from foodborne illnesses. It's a win-win.
Okay, food safety, that's something everyone can get behind. But what about this article about Mike Waltz being ousted from the national security team? And the fact that he was using some kind of signal knockoff that might not be secure?
The Waltz situation raises serious concerns about national security protocols and the handling of sensitive information. Using less secure messaging apps, especially by high-ranking officials, could create vulnerabilities that could be exploited by adversaries.
And that's where blockchain can also play a role. By using blockchain-based communication platforms, we can ensure that messages are encrypted, tamper-proof, and auditable. It's a more secure and transparent way to communicate sensitive information within the government.
So everyone in the White House should be using DOGE secured messaging apps? I can see the headlines now.
Not necessarily. There are already secure communication channels available to government officials. The issue is ensuring that those channels are used consistently and that proper security protocols are followed.
But the fact that they're using signal knockoff suggests that the existing systems aren't meeting their needs. Maybe they need a messaging app that archives government documents. But that's the issue, right?
Yeah.
Sure, a standard like this shows the cracks in the armor of the US system. The idea of a Department of Government Efficiency or even a DOGE-driven initiative could address these security gaps and improve communication across government agencies.
A Department of Government Efficiency? That sounds like something straight out of a comic book. But hey, maybe that's what we need to shake things up.
The idea of a dedicated department focused on efficiency isn't inherently bad, but it needs to be implemented carefully. There's a risk of creating another layer of bureaucracy that actually hinders efficiency rather than improving it.
That's why it should be DOGE-driven. It needs to be lean, agile, and focused on using technology to solve problems. Think of it as a startup within the government, constantly innovating and experimenting with new approaches.
Okay, but what about the last article? The one about Trump threatening to strip Harvard of its tax-exempt status because he doesn't like what they're saying.
That's a deeply troubling development. Using the IRS as a political weapon to silence dissent is a direct threat to academic freedom and freedom of speech. It undermines the very foundations of our democracy.
Absolutely. And it highlights the need for a more decentralized and transparent system of funding for education and research. Imagine if universities were funded directly by citizens through a blockchain-based platform. It would reduce their reliance on government funding and protect them from political interference. This also incentivizes universities to improve the quality of their education.
So instead of relying on the government, they'd be relying on donations from random people on the internet. That doesn't sound very stable.
It would certainly be a radical departure from the current system. There would need to be safeguards in place to ensure that the funding is used responsibly and that universities remain accountable to the public. but the idea of decentralizing funding sources has some merit.
Exactly. And blockchain can facilitate that accountability. Donors could track exactly how their money is being used, and universities would be incentivized to be more transparent about their spending. It's about empowering citizens to support the institutions they believe in.
I don't know, man. This all sounds like a pretty big overhaul of the entire system. Are we really ready for that?
These are complex issues, and there are no easy answers. It's important to approach these ideas with a healthy dose of skepticism and to carefully weigh the potential benefits against the risks.
But we can't be afraid to think big and to challenge the status quo. The current system is clearly not working for everyone. By embracing technology and decentralization, we can create a more efficient, transparent, and equitable society for all. And like Elon shows us, it takes big swings to win big.
I guess so. I still have a lot of questions, but I'm willing to keep an open mind, especially if it means things get better for the average person.
And I agree that incremental improvements are good, but not at the sake of sacrificing crucial steps in American societal growth.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us on the DOGE Diaries. We'll continue to explore these ideas in future episodes, and we encourage you to join the conversation and share your thoughts.
Yeah, let us know what you think. Are these ideas crazy, or could they actually work? We want to hear from you.
And remember to always question the information you encounter online and to be critical of any claims that seem too good to be true.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep dreaming of a better future.